If you're watching this video, then I'm sad to announce that Driver San Francisco has already been shut down. If you try, you'll be met with the same message: connection error. Your connection to Ubisoft's server has been lost. Online features will not be available until you sign in again. You can try to reconnect, but the same message returns each time. Ubisoft announced earlier this year that they were shutting down online services for 15 of their games, and sadly Driver was one of them. Articles pop up in the news every once in a while detailing impending server shutdowns and the last few loyal players on a game. I distinctly remember reading about the Halo 360 server shutdown. There were people keeping them alive for months after the fact, which fascinated me as a gamer, but I had no attachment to Halo. It didn't hurt, but this one really does. Over the last month or so, I've been playing Driver San Francisco online, trying to recapture the magic of what it was like at launch. It's been not only a reminder of what a game Driver was, but also the fate of all video games in time. Please join me today as we say goodbye to Driver San Francisco.
I've always sworn I'd drive to hell and back to take him down. Looks like I just got my chance.
Driver San Francisco was released on August 30th, 2011 for Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and Wii. It was later released for PC on September 27th, 2011 and on Mac March 8th, 2012. Today we'll be exclusively focusing on the PS3, 360, and PC versions of the game. The Wii version is a prequel to the original 1999 game and also features different gameplay mechanics from the mainline game. Pretty weird, but let me know if you'd like for me to check that one out sometime. Switching back to the mainline game, our story kicks off with series regular Jericho escaping from his prison transport, while Tanner and Jones chase. Eventually, Jericho gets the upper hand and he's now behind Tanner's car, shoving him down an alleyway. After a horrific driver-side crash, Tanner is left comatose, but the events of the story play out in his mind. He might be bedridden, but Tanner still believes that Jericho is on the loose and needs to be brought to justice. Tanner at first doesn't know that he's in a coma, but as time goes on, Tanner begins hearing and seeing things that make him more suspicious of the situation. These can be things like doctors in the hospital room talking about his health, or billboards you might see around town that present vague messages. In addition to these changes, Tanner learns the shift ability. The shift ability is what sets Driver San Francisco apart from the competition. With this ability, you're able to leave Tanner's physical body behind and take over the body of another driver anywhere in the world. Nobody else in the world sees you as Tanner when you shift into another body, so this makes for both funny and interesting conversations, as well as opening the gameplay up to a variety of different ways to tackle challenges. There's a point in the game where Tanner is trying to get closer to Jericho and his associates. Tanner decides to best accomplish this, he'll have to shift into one of Jericho's drivers and impress him with his driving ability. Without spoiling anything too major, Jericho does see through his act, and it makes for an interesting scene that otherwise would not have been possible. The story is very unique in that regard, but it's not going to leave you on the edge of your seat wondering what happens next. Driver has never been that serious to me, and this one won't change your opinion if you've played prior games. I do have to give them praise for trying something different, not only in the story but also the gameplay. Driver San Francisco does not disappoint one bit in that department. Like I stated earlier, shift is the primary mechanic here and the one you'll be relying on the most. San Francisco's map is large, and shift allows you to quickly fly around and see what needs doing next. My biggest problem with open world games in general is the actual process of getting from point A to point B. I feel that with many of these games, the pacing of the story is completely ruined by the downtime. The shift mechanic solves this problem, and with time you'll unlock more of the map and be able to zoom out further, allowing you to more quickly navigate the map. That's not to say that you should never drive around and explore, but it gives you options, and I like that. The map is also clearly marked with markers, yellow being story and city missions, and blue being challenges and dares. Story missions involve you playing as Tanner, driving his 1970 Dodge Challenger around, doing police work and generally trying to take down Jericho. City missions, however, involve random people around the city that need your help, and these were usually my favorite missions out of the entire game. You might be helping college students win a race to pay their tuition, or defending an armored van against attackers, or maybe just helping a kid pass his driving test. Most of these are pretty funny, with excellently written dialogue and an overall goofy nature to them. It's never too over the top though, it's just that Tanner being who he is in this game makes for some funny interactions. There's one in particular where you take over this man's body with his significant other in the seat next to him while the cops chase behind him. You have to follow these checkpoints to a rendezvous point while also avoiding the cops behind you. At first, she seems shy to actually tell you who and why you're going to see this person, only slipping up at times to mention his name as Robert. When you finally arrive at your location, this happens.
Soren, I have a confession. That's Robert, my boss. I love him, and I'm leaving you, and we're taking the money from the company account.
What? You did steal the money?
Well, see, as far as the cops are concerned, you stole the money. Robert sent them an email. He thinks of everything.
There are many more examples of this that you'll have to see for yourself, but most if not all of them are very replayable and very enjoyable. Only a certain number of city missions are required to be played before you can progress in the main story, but I do recommend playing all of them anyway. Dares and challenges are more straightforward. These could be similar gameplay-wise to the main missions, but don't have mission-specific dialogue like those do. The most important motivator for completing these dares and challenges should be the fact that it pays out willpower. Willpower is your currency in Driver San Francisco, and you're able to spend this on new cars, garages, and upgrades. Completing certain challenges also unlocks new cars for you to buy and adds them to your garage. You might be asking yourself, why do I need to buy cars if I can just shift into whatever I want? That's a good question, but honestly, not all cars are all that common, and the security of knowing you have a Ford GT at your disposal is nice. Driver San Francisco is the first driver game to have licensed cars, and usually I don't like this. I'm not normally a fan. It just seems that when licensed cars are added to games, the destruction of said cars is reduced to scrapes and scratches. But thankfully this isn't the case with Driver San Francisco, and you'll be busting up all kinds of modern and retro sedans, SUVs, trucks, sports cars, muscle cars, box trucks, buggies, and crossovers. Windshields can bust out, hoods and fenders will bend and fall off, sometimes even tires will crush and render the vehicle inoperable. It's crazy how many different types of cars are in this game for you to buy and drive. Each vehicle is modeled inside and out with working gauges and realistic interiors. I typically play racing games in first person, but I decided for the video it'd be easier to play in third person so you could get a good look at each car's exterior. Each car has 3 different statistics: speed, strength, and drift. Usually you won't see a car with all 3 maxed out, but knowing what car you need for each type of situation adds strategy and forethought to the selection process. If you're in a grip race, it might be smart to pick something like the Shelby GT500, or if you're in a drift competition, it might be smart to bring the Nissan 370Z. But I have to ask, what good are all of these cars if the driving stinks? Well, Driver San Francisco retains the physics that the series is known for and presents them in a silky smooth 60 FPS on console and 120 FPS on PC. The game even today still looks and feels fantastic, regardless of which platform you play on. Tapping the e-brake and hitting the perfect drift just feels right. Seeing the smoke build up in the wheel wells and then dissipate as you speed off was never not satisfying. In addition to cars, you're able to purchase upgrades to Tanner at each garage. These can be something like expanding your ability bar, increasing your willpower multiplier, or just showing movie tokens on the minimap. The ability bar down here on the left is essentially your bank for all of your powers outside of the initial shift ability. You're able to give any car a boost of speed or a ram ability that makes your car much more powerful than it would be normally. If you're planning on 100%ing the game, I do recommend buying the willpower multiplier as soon as possible. It won't multiply the willpower you earn from dares or challenges, but will multiply basic actions that you perform throughout your time in San Francisco. These include jumps, drifts, near misses, and more. This is the easiest way to earn more willpower in Driver San Francisco, and I found that having this multiplier while I searched for movie tokens gave me what was essentially passive income. Movie tokens unlock some of my favorite missions in the game. These are challenges loosely based off of classic car chase movies and TV shows that influence the Driver series. For example, Bite the Bullet is based off of the 1968 movie Bullet. In the movie, Steve McQueen is driving his famed green Ford Mustang, chasing down this Dodge Charger. In the game, I guess they couldn't get the rights to the Charger, so they've replaced it with a Challenger. It's a bummer because I think they could have possibly done something with the Dukes of Hazzard with that Charger, but it's cool anyways. Seeing all of the Beetles and other classic cars in the mission with the film grain and everything puts a smile on my face every time. My favorite challenge in the game throws it back, but not quite as far as 1968. The challenge is called Blast from the Past, and to unlock this, you have to first buy a DeLorean. Now, if you're familiar with the Back to the Future movies, you'll know exactly what's going to happen next, but Doc and Marty had to hit 88 miles per hour in that movie to go back into the past. So in-game, you spin up the DeLorean, and once you hit 88, these yellow lines appear behind your car, and you've unlocked the challenge. This challenge replicates the infamous tutorial mission from the original 1999 Driver game. It is so cool the way you unlock that. The original gave me so many headaches too as a child, but replaying this in San Francisco made me happy, and the rush of nostalgia feels just right. San Francisco doesn't call back to the past very often, but when it does, it makes me smile. There's another throwback I wanted to highlight, this time to Driver 2. In the opening scene of that game, Jericho is shooting up the Red River Bar, and Hound Dog Taylor's song Sitting Here Alone plays in the background. And this is featured among Driver San Francisco's official soundtrack, and I recognized it instantly. I love the OST in this. There aren't distinct radio stations or anything like that, but instead it's just a defined playlist that you're able to skip around in. There's rock, folk, funk, rap, soul, jazz. There's a crazy amount of variety here. I didn't know many of the artists on this soundtrack prior to playing, but I do now. Film Director mode returns to the series after being gone in parallel lines for some bizarre reason. It functions about the same as in the other games, even if my game's visuals bugged out. I never really messed around with the Film Director outside of Driver 2 and 3, but the gist is that it allows you to edit and cut together an action sequence based off of your own game footage. There's also a New Game Plus mode that unlocks after you've beaten the game once, which allows you to retain your upgrades and cars. I didn't play this mode too much, and I didn't see much point to it, as I felt that the game was fair and had plenty of content for a fresh run each replay. Outside of the single player, I did spend a whole lot of time on the multiplayer, and even though it's now gone, I wanted to discuss it and immortalize it. The footage you're seeing has been captured exclusively from the PS3 version of the game, just days before it shut down. The PC version has had issues for years connecting to the Ubisoft servers without a workaround, and even with said workaround, I couldn't find anybody to play with. Playing on the PS3 for the first time, I was really happy to see other players on, and I'm happy that I can help preserve just a glimpse of this game's phenomenal multiplayer. I'm going to give my usual overview of the modes and such, but I also want to interject my own experience on the servers the last few days. So there are 6 main playlists to select: free-for-all, racing, takedown, team, shift racing, and team racing. I spent most of my time in free-for-all, and as the name implies, is a mode where every man is out for themselves. But before you jump into the match itself, you have to qualify. Qualifying can involve scoring more points off of jumps or drifts, or simply breaking more signs than your opponents. Your qualifying position determines not only where you start on the grid, but also how full your ability bar is to begin the round with. Free-for-all features most of my favorite modes in Driver San Francisco. In this version of the children's playground game, you want to be it. As you're it, you'll score points as those seconds tick away while the others try to crash into you and become it. Whoever gets to 100 first wins. Not to brag, but I won most of my tag matches I played. I still got it. Another one of my favorites is Trailblazer, where this DeLorean has 2 gold trails that follow it, and players have to try to stay ideally within both of the lines to win. You can imagine how chaotic this can get, with a lobby of 8 smashing into each other trying to gain the upper hand with different vehicles. Again, I didn't have a whole lot of competition here. I pretty much just parked my car right behind the DeLorean and scored an insane amount of points. There were times where guys would shove me off the line, but they were never truly effective. Racing is exactly what it sounds like, where you're given a car and a track to race on, but you're not allowed to shift or use any of your powers. I enjoyed racing, but the lack of shift made this feel like any other racing game, and so I didn't spend a whole lot of time on it. I also finished second quite a lot because, man, this dude was quick. Takedown is essentially cops and robbers. You take turns being the getaway or the cops. You're only the getaway once, so scoring points is extremely important. As the getaway, you're tasked with driving into different markers around the map before the cops are able to take you down. The cops score points by damaging the getaway. They're able to shift into different cars too, so as the getaway, you can never get too comfortable. In this playlist, I found some boosters who were trying to get last-minute trophies before the game shut down. That's sort of the vibe I got when playing the game online. There were high-ranked players still playing like normal, but I also encountered lower-ranked guys boosting. Nothing wrong with that, just an observation. The team playlist allows you to play team modes like Capture the Flag, where both teams fight over a singular flag to bring back to their base to score points. I could only ever find 1 or 2 other guys for team modes, so unfortunately I don't have much footage of these. Trust me though, they were really fun back in the day, just not my first choice. Shift racing allows you to switch cars mid-race as long as you pass through the checkpoints in order. I found this mode to be my least favorite of the bunch. Once you wreck your initial car, it becomes difficult to find a similarly competitive vehicle, and you're basically just hoping that the guys in front of you also wreck. I have similar issues with Checkpoint Rush. In Checkpoint Rush, checkpoints will eventually disappear, so you have to stay near the leader to actually score any points. Once I fell behind, I once again found it difficult to find a competitive car. The guys I kept encountering in my lobbies were on point, very fast and very precise. You can tell that they had been playing the game for years at this point, and I think that's really cool. Finally, we end with team racing. There's a relay race mode here where each team has a torch that needs to be picked up. Once this is picked up, you have a limited amount of time to keep the torch before you need to pass it off. Otherwise, your car will shut down and you'll need to shift into another. My team and I weren't very good at this, and we lost easily. I also played a mode called Team Rush, where it's similar to the Checkpoint Rush mode from Shift Racing, except this time you're scoring points as a collective instead of individually. Sadly though, it was a 2v1 and my team won easily, and I didn't get another chance to play, but I had fun. At the end of each game, you'll be shown an overview screen of everyone's score, as well as their rank and in-game avatar. XP is earned by just playing the game and unlocks cars, avatars, and multiplayer-specific shift abilities. I sadly didn't rank up fast enough to experience the multiplayer-exclusive shift abilities. I originally played this on the 360, but they do seem fun. Swap allows you to change the vehicle you use shift on into any vehicle instantly. Spawn allows you to spawn in any owned vehicle from your garage on the spot, and Impulse Attack causes your victim's car to spin out of control. With all of that said, that just about sums up my experience with Driver San Francisco in its last few days. It had issues like frequent disconnects and sometimes it wouldn't send you to the most populated lobby, but I had fun overall. It was just a minor inconvenience to experience such a great online multiplayer once again, and it seems the other players agree, as I was being matched up with them almost immediately after a disconnect. It's such a shame that Ubisoft shut the game down. Sure, PC players have options to continue the game outside of official servers, but console guys sadly don't. It's my hope that someday someone will revive the PS3 and 360 versions of the game like the community has done with SOCOM and Killzone. I understand why Ubisoft shut the servers down, security issues and that sort of thing, but it doesn't make it hurt any less. Ubisoft abandoned the franchise long ago, with it being pulled from sale in September of 2016. Just 5 years after launch. I would welcome a reboot, a sequel, or even just an HD remaster of any of the games at this point. It's been over a decade now since we've seen anything Driver related, and it really bums me out. Wrapping things up here, Driver San Francisco is an all-time classic and one of my favorite games of all time. It marked a time in my life where I finally had gained some sort of independence. I was still living with my parents at the time and I was unemployed. When I first started making YouTube videos 10 or so years ago, I had no idea that anyone would watch them, let alone make money off of them. But YouTube cut me a check for about $300 back then, and I spent almost all of it. I bought a new controller, some new clothes for interviews, and of course, Driver San Francisco. This game means so much more to me than just what I've described to you in this video. It marked a time in my life where I worked for something. I accomplished something of note. This is something that I can't completely put into words in this short YouTube video, but Driver San Francisco sort of marks a transitional period in my life. There's sentimental value in this game to me, but the point I'm trying to make is that it stands on its own merits as well. If you can get your hands on it, I promise you will not be disappointed. I set out to make this video as a love letter to the game, but it quickly turned into a eulogy, an in memoriam, an obituary. I knew this day would come, I just didn't realize it would happen so soon. As much as it hurts me to say it, goodbye Driver, you were one of the good ones.